The National Student Financial Aid Scheme is warning landlords not to evict students, saying the latest round of payments for accommodation is scheduled to be processed next week. NSFAS, which has been dealing with serious payment delays, said previously that housing subsidies would be in by Friday last week. NSFAS spokesperson Ishmael Mnisi joins me now. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Mnisi. Thanks very much for your time. I guess the question is, why was the situation allowed to deteriorate to this point where we're seeing protests? You are now asking landlords not to evict students. You heard from one of the landlords saying they too are in a fix because they can't pay their own staff. They can't provide services to these students.
Well, good afternoon to you, Vuyo, and the viewers. I think the bone of contention is the compliance issues in terms of what ought to be done by landlords, what ought to be done by students and NSFAS for it to process payments. But we have made progress in as far as this incident that we are referring to today. We have spoken to landlords, shared information that was supposed to have been shared before. And as we speak, NSFAS is processing that information to make sure that the landlords who were not paid in our previous cycle get paid on the 17th of this month. However, we want to emphasize one issue, and we have agreed with landlords that they will play their part to assist the process, whilst NSFAS also have to come up and make sure that information submitted to it is being processed and payments are done so that the welfare of the student could be guaranteed.
So you're saying you are not at fault here?
Look, I would not want to 100% say that, but there are role players in the payment of student accommodation. Firstly, it starts with students. There is a contract that students must sign with landlords, which is the basis for NSFAS to make payments. And when that contract has been signed, it must be given to our service provider, who would then pass it over to NSFAS for us to verify the student first, if it is a valid student, and if the claim is valid as well, before a payment could be done. Now, if that process is not done on time, then the delays would occur where students would not be paid. And this is what we have observed. And hence we have made a special dispensation now as NSFAS to pay even irregularly, out of the regular slots that we'll have, to make sure that we close on the delays that have been incurred for the welfare of the students. And that's why we are saying the process, we would not utterly say that it is not with NSFAS. However, it will be the information that gets submitted late, which then affects the processing time of these payments.
What though is the problem? Are people just being tardy, or are the problems with steps that they need to follow in order to comply? What lies at the heart of the problem? What
lies at the heart of the problem is the understanding of the NSFAS systems, the processes themselves that leads towards payment. What we now find is that landlords, when after accepting students, sometimes they would not sign those official agreements, which are a license for NSFAS to pay. Because if we don't have that agreement, it means there is no agreement between NSFAS and the landlord to pay. Now, we discovered that in some instances, some landlords would not sign instantly those agreements with students because there's a jostling for students. Now, when student comes, landlords simply rush to have them into their establishments without following all these processes. Come the time for payment, then discover that I've got students that have been staying here, I've not been paid for 2 months. And whereas at NSFAS, we're saying, give us the invoice and the agreement, then we'll know who we are paying, because the NSFAS money follows where the student is. And this is the process that we have discovered that still there are landlords who don't understand them, and we are working closer now with them to make sure that we close this loophole, because at the end of the day, it affects landlords' businesses, it affects students the most.
But are you going out of your way to assist them, those that are not compliant? Are you helping them proactively to make sure that this problem is sorted?
we are reaching out to them. As I was coming here and earlier today, I've engaged with a number of landlords in KwaZulu-Natal, particularly around the Durban area, which are affected, and we've agreed that we will work closer with them to make sure that where they do not understand the process, we clarify it. And it's not only in KwaZulu-Natal that we are going to do that. We are going to go through all the provinces to make sure that where processes are not understood, we work closer with our landlords.
But then, some people are owed money from last year. I mean, that's quite a period. I mean, we are in what, April now. Could that not have been sorted out earlier? So that if you have to deal with problems at all, these are new problems from this year. Why do you have debts going back to 2024?
It's the same problem, Vuyo, where you'll find that landlords accepted students without these agreements. Even up until to date, if we don't receive those agreements, we would then not be able to process the payments. The challenge now for the previous year's accommodation bills is that some of the students have left those establishments and contracts were not signed with the landlords. Now we are seated with the situation where a landlord might have accommodated students who are no longer students or who might have migrated to a different accommodation establishment. Now, if that agreement is not there, therefore NSFAS would then have to pay a blank check to a landlord where the student has not signed. And we know in terms of accountability of the public purse that it is not done. We need an agreement that an NSFAS accredited student who NSFAS is funding has been in that accommodation establishment before we pay. Now, this is what we are discussing again with our landlords to say they've might have committed an error before by not following these processes, which ultimately is affecting their businesses. But as I'm saying, we're working now very close with them to make them understand why we undergo these processes and why they have to comply with what we are putting forth as NSFAS.
But outside of those processes of trying to assist those who now need to be paid, are you running a parallel process to perhaps simplify or make it easier for people to comply, having identified the problem?
Certainly we are doing that. Our processes now are very simple because having understood that other landlords might not be amicable to the operations of NSFAS, we are working with our institutions as well, both universities and TVET colleges, to make sure that we assess those applications, we share data, and when we have received the claim, we counterbalance what we have received before payments gets done. And all these efforts are made to ensure that the process for claiming is less cumbersome and that we don't miss any deadlines in payments. So because we said we want to streamline all of those processes to make sure that the next disbursement is not marked with all of these problems that we are currently facing.
And this is the only problem that we're dealing with at the moment. All is well otherwise.
We have made significant progress, I must say, Vuyo, in payment of allowances to students. We are paying university students through their institutions, and we are paying the TVET college students directly. And the good news is that we have even increased the allowances that we are paying to TVET college students, just to make sure that university and TVET college students' allowances are brought to equilibrium.
Mr. Mnisi, let me thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Vuyo.